Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Step Back Tonight for today, March 23rd, 2021. I'm your host, Tristan, and I'm Tristan and the host of Step Back History, and Tristan Won't Shut Up. I stream 2 days a week on Mondays and Tuesdays, Mondays from 12 till 2. I do the Monday Discourse with Mia Mulder, and then on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9, which you're watching right now, with myself and you guys. I want to know that my stream, The Reactor, is coming to an end. I used to do a Friday stream. This week is the last week of that stream, so we're going to be doing one last Reactor starting this week. So that'll be at noon on Friday Eastern time. And yeah, I go by he, him pronouns. You can find my work at stepbackhistory.com or tristanwon'tshutup.com. If you want to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory, or if you have Amazon Prime, you can give a Twitch Prime subscription on Twitch. If you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you get one free Twitch Prime subscription per month for free, and if you don't use it, Amazon basically just gets to keep your money. So please use it to support an independent creator. If that's Step Back, that's great, but if not, just make sure that it gets used. Give you an update on where I am on content. I am deep in the guts of editing the next Step Back video. Inshallah, patrons will be able to see it tomorrow. And if things go poorly, maybe Thursday, but I doubt it. Tomorrow's most likely. I'm pretty good place when it comes to the video. And then it'll be out for all of you guys probably on Friday or Monday, depending upon how things go. As for the next Tristan Won't Shut Up video, it's going to be a ways yet. I got a lot of things I need to get out of the way first before I can commit to regularly working on Tristan Won't Shut Up videos again. So, be patient. Yeah, and other thing. Oh, yeah, if you want to submit questions to future streams that I do, I have a link that I'm going to put in the chat. You can go to that, and yeah. Something weird about the focus. I don't know what to say. But yeah, the link I put in the chat is a link to a place where you can submit questions if you'd like. I might get them to the stream. I have a few that I'm saving on my backlog, but I also, if you have a question that would take me like a sentence to answer, there's the chat. I'll be paying attention. See, a boss is making himself feel very welcomed by coming in and calling everybody dumbasses and then talking about how few people there are watching. Where is everyone at? That's a good question. Must just be a quiet night. Is that a cat on the corner in the dresser? Yeah, that's Phoebe. That's her house. If you do the Three Sisters, you worried someone will see your garden, assume you're not really using land, and take it over. Very good. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why it's a bit slow tonight. There's about 25 people in total across the two platforms, so it is what it is. We're here to relax for a couple hours. That's it. So we'll have a good time. Yeah, as far as like news goes, I was just reading stuff about the third wave in Ontario and how Ontario is prematurely opening, and now we've got this new third wave that's growing pretty rapidly based on the COVID variants. Or I should also mention that what's it called? I should also just mention really quick that I'm sorry about yesterday. My internet kind of crapped out and I couldn't keep streaming. So for some reason my up speed just completely borked and I have no idea why. something bad happened last week? Or just happened to come up? Did something come up if there wasn't a stream? Yeah, I just had a headache. I just had a really bad headache. Is all. Did you hear that Discord may be bought by Microsoft? So much for less as Discord server. I heard there was rumor, but I also heard that they're fairly insubstantiated. So we'll have to see if that's a. I don't know if that was just this morning. Maybe it's developed during the day. But last I heard, it was like nothing super. Like even like there's nothing super. What's it called? Intense, or at least nothing super substantial about the rumor. But if that does happen, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what happens with. Yeah. You said you were getting rid of the reactor and writing for the Cold War because you need to focus on your life more. I thought you were working as much as possible to help you cope with the fact that lockdown is preventing you from having much of a life. That's true. But that's that turned out to not be the smartest idea. I thought I could, work more in the evenings, but I was starting to find that, once you get after supper and it gets into the evening, I just can't get myself to really do that sort of extra shift that I wanted to do. So I decided, and also, I had, a pretty low point, last week, where I was feeling pretty bummed out by the pandemic, and I was just feeling really stressed out, and I had to I was backed up on all the projects I was working on, and I felt like I was always behind, so I had a talk with Kelly and sort of worked out what I need to do to sort of not only give myself some time to just chillin', I guess, but I have I have to chase that dopamine. That time that I thought I could fill with more work, I should probably be filling with reading books and gardening and watching TV or going for walks or something that's good for me, because I wasn't giving myself a lot of time to recharge. And when you don't give yourself time to recharge, you burn out. Especially when you have ADHD, it's very easy for you to burn out with ADHD. And you couldn't find my last reactor because of copyright claims and stuff like that. A lot of my videos get blocked. A lot of my, especially my reactor videos, but a lot of my streams get internationally blocked. You might have to go onto Discord to find it, or not Discord, Twitch. Your last step back had me in pain from laughing. I had a migraine that day, but still, oh my. You talking about the stream or the last, the COINTEL Pro video? What are you referring to there, Mr. Caleb? You hear about the Bristol riot? Only a little bit. I don't know the details. I've heard that there was a woman who was murdered by a off-duty police officer, and it led to protests that were violently put down by the police, and then the police tried to make a law pass that essentially made it illegal to protest, and so it's turned into a riot. That's about the extent of the story that I've gotten on this end. I don't know if I'm close to on the thing, but be way harder to legally hold public protests. In reaction last year, is there a way to do an effective mass protest movement without incurring a state backlash like that? Or you just have to accept that's how governments will respond if you decide to take this to the streets? Yeah, I do think so. For real. I would argue that civil rights protesters knew that what they were, civil rights protesters who were trying to get a law changed, did so by doing direct action where they were intentionally violating the law and then allowing themselves to get arrested. That was the method of protest in the 1950s and 60s. And yeah, I do think that I think I've said this before, that while there's some value to a protest where you have all the permits and everything is legal, in many ways, if you have everything if you have everything, all the permits are there, you've got the stage and the loudspeaker, and everything is approved, and you've got the police like on bicycles, just watching. You have basically ensured that whatever it is that you care about is ignorable, because something like, if it's that safe, then that means the state's not threatened by whatever it is you're saying. So that's something. Yeah. Sucks what's happening in the UK. Sucks that the police are... It sounds like the police are just like completely off the leash now. But the thing is that we've spent the last few decades trying to reinterpret what the proper way to protest is, and shrinking the scope of what proper protest is to something extraordinarily small, to the point where it's just doing public demonstrations that are completely permitted and legal and completely something that the state can just ignore. The bill means you can face up to 10 years for causing annoyance. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that is basically anti-democratic, that's for sure. So, fight on, my Bristol buddies. Will making even non-violent protests hard to legally make people say, if we're going to get arrested either way, might as well take the bats? Possibly. It depends upon how the police react to unlawful protests. I think that there's fairly often what happens is that there's multi-night, you come out for a protest, the police act violently, so then people who come back the next night come with more security precautions, the police act more violently, and there's sort of a reciprocation, and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up. And that's sort of like what happened in Portland last summer. And now that kind of protest season is starting to pick up again, we're probably going to see some more nasty stuff go down. But I mean, there is a what's it called? I think it's a Martin Luther King line that says that the riot is the last desperate cry of the unheard. Like, riots are when you have ignored somebody through every other means. This is what they're gonna do. But I read it somewhere that the kind of thing, toothless rallies, came partially out of the post-World War II undercutting unions, where most organization lost its base and power. I mean, people's riots are the language of the unheard. There you go. I don't know who said it, but it seems to ring pretty true. A lot of times I think that people are afraid of, having their lives ruined by being arrested by the police and all that kind of stuff. And on top of that, if you have a political bugbear that you want to draw media attention to, and you want, to network and meet other activists, those protests can have utility. The Women's March every year probably doesn't need to be a riot, but it's just a thing where you can guarantee that you'll get semi-sympathetic news coverage talking about issues to deal with violence against women or sexism or whatever the sort of major subject that they're talking about is. But really, if you want to make a strong statement, if you are fighting an unjust law, and you're not thinking about civil disobedience or something like that, then that's a problem. Because the state, like when the women's march and stuff happen, because they're, you know, they're well behaved, they don't they get the permits, they have the big stage, the media might cover it, and, you know, that might result in some political pressure down the line, but for the most part the state can say, oh yeah, we support women, go on that, and then they can just do nothing like they do every year. That's sort of the way of the state. The state really only listen, like, we have this, okay, so people who believe in the state have this sort of delusion that they think that the state in any way can be nudged to do anything that is in the interest of their people without being forced. I've never really seen a situation in which the state willingly did something that, like the state typically has very little interest in the welfare of its citizens. Usually only cares about the power of those who have power, and unless they feel like there is no way for them to maintain their power over you without making some sort of change, then they'll ignore you. And if they don't feel threatened by their own people, they'll do nothing. There's no reason for them to. If they think they might lose an election, then they'll do something. But for the most part, like, they don't care. Like, no politician gives two shits about, and I know I'm wearing like an AOC shirt right now, which is like really like ironic, but like really no politician in the long run has an interest in maintaining or making things better for other people, or the state's not capable of doing it. It's not really what the state's for. The state is for ensuring a smaller and smaller group of people have all of the power. They're the ones who have the cops and the soldiers and everything. And yeah, maybe AOC is an exception, but I think that's exceptions don't. What's it called? Exceptions make bad or make bad generalizations. So, can I ask a question without being insta banned? And if it's too much, I will drop it. I don't know. What kind of question is this? I feel nervous. Yeah, about that kind quote. I wonder if the reason this is happening is because the Labour Party is trying to go back to Blairism, so it feels like there's no legitimate way to make positive effect in the UK anymore. I don't know. You guys are pretty far away from an election right now. I imagine that it has to do with the situation you're in right now. I don't know if partisan politics really plays a role in it. State also helps keeping order, and without order, there's chaos. Without order, there's peace, is from the experiences I've seen. And if anything, usually what turns a protest into a riot is the introduction of police violence. Whether it be overt or covert, there's a lot of evidence that police try to rally protest. Like, you can tell if the state is actually threatened by your protest if you start seeing them do shit like planting bricks, like planting big piles of bricks on the street, or you start seeing people in like police issue boots showing up at the protest who talk about wanting to break windows, or they just show up in instead of showing up in like their shorts and t-shirts and a bicycle, they show up in their riot gear. That's how you know that the state feels somewhat threatened by what you're doing. No change successfully happened by appealing to the powerful. I agree. I don't really like the whole like thing like, oh, without order there's chaos. Well, it's like, you know what? The state's concept of order is not an orderly society where everyone works with each other. The state's version of order is their dominance. They see any challenge to their authority as chaos. And they see no issue with violently suppressing any dissent towards the state. That is the purpose of states. They think that they have the singular authority to tell you how to live your life and what to do and who to love and what things, what rights, what resources you're allowed to have. And if you threaten that order, they will come down on you hard. They will kill you. They don't care. You're a fucking ant to them. When you have societies that are so large that you have states where people are so numerous that they're just sort of abstracted away as numbers, they don't care. They don't care if, like the thing is, like, the whole, I don't even know if it's a true Stalin line, but the true line of, like, you know, one person's death is a tragedy and 1,000 is a statistic. Like, that's sort of true in the way that politicians think. They don't particularly care if 1,000 people die. They don't. Why do you think that, like, all the governments are allowing, like 10 million people now? 10, 11 million people have died of the coronavirus? When this could have been shut down, like, extremely early on by just doing the stuff that needed to be done, the stuff that Vietnam showed needed to be done. Think about how many millions of people would be alive today if they weren't so singularly focused on maintaining economic growth at the expense of millions of lives. If any state gave a shit about their people, they wouldn't have done that. There's like a ratcheting effect. Yeah. I feel like Corbyn could have acted as a focal point for resistance to the bill in a way Starmer has no interest in. Sure. Yeah, I guess there is probably frustration over the fact that the Labour Party is not fighting this bill. Or if they are, they're not doing it strongly. You'd have to fill me in on that one. I haven't been following it that closely. But yeah, if you have no party that represents your interests... I mean, okay, I should say, because there really isn't a party that represents anybody's interests. Because I imagine that if Labour is in control, they would be doing something very similar. It's just that, you know, they pretend to make... they're for placating a different group of people, while other people are for placating a different group of people. So... The Navajo Nation had its first clear month. You see, there you go. There's a society that, because it is sort of like, in a weird way, quasi-independent, took care of its own people and figured it out. They had a really rough time because, you know, they have no resources, and the U.S. state is still trying to slow motion erase them from the face of the planet. But they're not a state that's focused on maximizing profits at the cost of all other things. Maybe I'm too cynical. Do governments really care about their death toll? No. I 100% would say no. When you don't see... Thing is, like, when you have governments that are so big that you can't really, like, conceive of how many people... Like, I live in a country of 39, 37 million people, something like that. I can't even conceive of 37 million people. I couldn't imagine that many people in my head. And yet, we have, like, people who are trying to be responsible for that many people. Like, freaking, we get, like, 10 people a day dying in Ontario, or, like, 20 people a day. It fluctuates. But, like... Doug Ford doesn't care. Like, to him, that's 10 people. He doesn't see 10 broken homes. He doesn't see 10 people growing up without their parents. They don't see 10 grandchildren saying goodbye to their grandparents over FaceTime because they can't see each other. They don't see 10 people coughing and hacking and struggling for every ounce of oxygen they can have to keep themselves alive until their body just gives in on them. They just see 10 people died. Well, we'll put that on the fucking graph because we have to make sure that this other graph goes up. So, you know, we have to figure out how many of those are worth it. You know? That's sort of the way that I would look at it. Man, I've become fucking an iconoclast today. Just went straight anarchist right from the beginning. Jeez. Man, labor has fallen hard. Man, the UK... And, like, what's it called? Our left-wing party's also been fucking the football quite a bit, too. The NDP have also tried to attack their own most promising future leader in the interests of trying to basically suppress the left wing of the NDP. So, yeah, I don't know. There really isn't much of a... There isn't much of... Like, what's it called? The idea that you can pretend that there is left-wing representation in any Western democracy is a joke. Really. Fucking the football. I don't know. It's a term I say for when somebody does very badly at something. When someone fucks up really bad. And usually in a comically bad fashion. It's a new expression. I mean, I thought I'd say it too much, but you know, I'll go for it. All right. First question we got here from tonight is from Wotan. Is the Electoral College ever going to go, in your opinion? I think of it kind of cynically, like if I was a Machiavellian in the Democratic leadership, I'd be against it. They get to be the party of the most people, yet in constant threat of having basic rights like abortion taken away, and even enough most people agree with taking this. I mean, yeah, the Electoral College is bad. Do I see the Electoral College going away soon? I could see, like, the Electoral College is one of those things where there might be just enough popular will to make it happen, and you don't really need Washington to do it, is the thing. There's this thing called the Interstate Compact that's currently got several states signed on to it, and basically the idea is that it short-circuits the Electoral College by having their states vote for whoever wins the popular vote, no matter what the results are in their state. And they don't need to get every state on board for that. You don't need a constitutional amendment. You don't need a law. You don't need anything. You just need for enough states to get on board that it wins the Electoral College. And at this point, they're still a little ways away from getting to that point, to getting their 270 Electoral College votes, but they're getting closer. Let's see how close the Interstate Compact is. Why don't you need every state? Because you would just need enough so that it would be enough to win a presidential election. Because if you have enough states, like just say like if you have 271 Electoral College votes worth of states signed onto the compact, that means that they agree to vote for whoever won the popular vote. And you only need 271 Electoral College votes to win the election. So you just do it. So currently, at the moment, so let's there's 196 Electoral College votes signed onto the compact. The signatories are Maryland, New Jersey, Illinois, Hawaii, Washington, Massachusetts, DC, Vermont, California, Rhode Island, New York, Connecticut, Colorado, Delaware, New Mexico, and Oregon, which, like, you probably can see here are mostly blue states, but you could see like right now, currently they've got 147 Electoral College votes worth of states that are considering joining the compact, including Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, West Virginia, Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa. So if they can just get, if they can, like they're well on their way, and if they can get enough people to cross this over, to me, I think this is the easiest way to get the popular vote. There's an introduction to bring DC to statehood today. That would be interesting. DC getting statehood, not so much for the Electoral College. It doesn't actually matter that much for the Electoral College. But what the DC statehood would mean is it would change a lot of the political calculus for Congress, because districts, like districting for the House of Representatives, for example, is based roughly on population. And so they would need to redistrict, because there's a constitutional amendment put in place in the 1930s that limits the amount of people in Congress to 438 members. And so they would have to just reproportion them so that Washington would get an amount of seats proportionate to the population of D.C. And that would be more than several states. The other thing is that it would get 2 senators, and DC is an extremely Democratic friendly state, or city, and so it would be almost 2 guaranteed Democratic senators, which in this current climate would upset the balance and would get the Senate to. Would get the Senate. The Senate would have 52 members, or sorry, 102 members, and they would probably, and 2 more of them would be pretty safe Democratic seats, which would mean that the Democrats would have more of an ability to have say over the Senate, because right now the Senate very heavily skews towards Republicans. Why would you limit the number of people in Congress? I actually don't remember the logic why. It happened during FDR's administration, and I can't remember the reasons why it happened. DC already gets, so like DC statehood wouldn't change the Electoral College, unless like it depends upon how many, like how they, like right now they just kind of get 3 just so that they can say that they can vote for president, but DC voters, like it would, I think that like if they, if DC got added as a state, they'd probably get rid of that, and then they would give them a number of Electoral College votes based on how many representatives they have and how many senators they have, which might be 3, but it might be 4 or 5, so it depends. It could change the Electoral College depending upon how districting goes and the census and everything like that. DC and Vermont have roughly the same population, then they would probably get 1. They'd probably have the Washington, D.C. representative, which, is another safe Democratic seat in the House, which is not nothing, but it's less than 2 guaranteed senators. You don't think it's an amendment? It's just a law? Okay. I don't know. Because, these, like, very small population states have a very... They don't really matter much in the House, but they matter a whole lot in the Senate, because even a state like, West Virginia or I think what's the other one? Wyoming. Wyoming only has 1 Congress member because it has, like, only a few 100,000 people in it, but it has 2 senators. So... The Permanent Apportionment Act of 1929. Well, there you go. Ooh, someone here vote for Delma do Brasil. Game Force G. It's looking like you might have Lula back in the seat in the next presidential election. That'd be pretty sweet. 7 states have one representative: Alaska, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, and Delaware. Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think of the idea of every community being representative by at least one rep? As of 2015, that would be 19,505. That would be interesting. The thing is that the United States is just a... I think, if anything, this is a sign of showing that the United States is just far too big of a country. Like, I think we have... I think our rule of thumb is that each parliamentarian is supposed to have... What? Every every member of parliament is supposed to represent about 10,000 people, I think. I want to say. In our rep by pop system, I think we have, like... I'm trying to remember. Let's see. Parliament has 443... Oh, no. 105 senators and 338 MPs. So, I think it's supposed to be roughly, like... Yeah. But the fact is, like, if you... Like, because of the size of Congress, like... One member of Congress can represent something like nearly 1 million people. It can represent they can represent like let me just check something real quick. So New York's 14th congressional district. This is AOC's riding. AOC's riding has a population of 696,664 people. Okay? You know, it's a New York City district. And it's represented by one person, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Then we can go to, let's go with Wyoming at-large congressional seat. So Wyoming, I guess I could just say Wyoming. What's the population of Wyoming? Wyoming has a population of, let's see here. Where's the population? Here we go. Has a population of 578,759. So, even though 100,000 more people live in New York's 14th district than they do in the entire state of Wyoming, the AOC and the congressperson from there is, I don't even know who it is, but the congressperson from Wyoming at large is the same amount of voting power. And it's the same deal where Wyoming has 2 senators, and those 2 senators have as much voting power as all of California. Yeah. And unfortunately, the way that the Electoral College works as a way to sort of balance out things results in people who live in rural areas, and in America, this is largely white rural states, have a really outsized voting power when it comes to the Electoral College because they have an outsized amount of political power when it comes to the Senate. And this is why the Senate is so hard for Democrats to control. And it is always going to skew hard for Republicans because you've got states like Wyoming that are basically like empty states, but they still get 2 senators, when California, which has a bigger population than Canada, also gets only 2 senators. And this is why the Senate is kind of an anti-democratic institution. It's designed to be that way, and maybe is a thing that we shouldn't have. Just saying. And yet most of the 500,000 people in Wyoming feel disenfranchised, like nothing they do matters. I mean, maybe, but it seems like the politics of white resentment seems to be fairly prominent in all of American politics. Like, if you think about it, America is a very diverse racial country. It is very urban, but because of the anti-democratic aspects of American federal politics, it results in having to kowtow to the demands of, like, rural white conservatives who don't have any stake in, like, big urban issues. And so things like, environmental protection, land use, things like all these things, like people who live in cities just like lose all say. It does violate the democratic. That's my question. It does violate this democratic idea. Oh yeah. I do wonder. Yeah, so Wyoming is currently in the Senate is made up of 2 Republicans, and so the U.S. Senate is made up right now. The entire delegation is 2 Republican senators and a Republican representative. So, I feel like they've been having a fairly good job being represented in the last 4 years. They could have gotten more represented. I guess Wyoming could have gotten more representation if January 6th had gone differently, but either way. How do you think he'd be dealing with Joe Manchin? Bernie Sanders? Ooh. Something makes me think that it would be appealing, kind of going past Joe Manchin to the American people. I would be very curious if, like, something like if Bernie Sanders was president and he was dealing with Joe Manchin, that he would start showing up in West Virginia and start talking to people and start getting, like, Joe Manchin's constituency all riled up and angry at him, and possibly even considering primarying him with a more progressive candidate. That feels more... Yeah, check who the Wyoming's rep is. It's Liz Cheney. It's Dick Cheney's daughter, I want to say. Yeah. I just use Wyoming as an example of a very low population state that is absurdly overrepresented in federal politics. Like, when people in Wyoming go to vote for president, their vote is worth something like 600 times more than someone in California. That's ridiculous. So, I would love to, like, I think that if Joe Manchin was refusing, Bernie would have been going to West Virginia and talking to the constituents. Because that's, like, the thing that Bernie does, right? Bernie is always the guy who will go over the heads of the representative and go directly to the people. And something makes me think that Joe Manchin will threaten to, like, rain hellfire upon the Biden administration if he threatens his seat. And Joe Biden is a fairly conservative Democrat. So, I don't know. I don't see... Like, Joe Biden wouldn't have the will to do something, play hardball like that. But Bernie is not a Democrat, as Christy Winters and other conservative Democrats are like to point out. So, you could have a whole thing where, so you, like, what's it called? Upsetting the balance of power in the Democratic Party wouldn't fucking matter, because Bernie would be about trying to get policies passed. He'd be trying to get Medicare for all passed. And these are extremely popular ideas. So I imagine if somehow Bernie became president, having Joe Manchin trying to explain to his constituents why he doesn't think that they deserve to have medical care would be quite the interesting conversation. I'd be interested to know what kind of, like, twists they would go through. If he did that, wouldn't all the libs be like, Bernie is being so irresponsible. If you primary Manchin, a Republican will just win. I mean, that's what they'll say, but it's what Bernie would do, I hope. think the current U.S. voting system would ever change? Well, we talked a little bit earlier about the popular vote interstate compact, which could short circuit the electoral college votes, and it would at least make the presidential election a popular vote. But as for changing like the rules of Congress, especially because Republicans benefit so much from the way that the federal government's designed to be non-democratic, and at the same time, the changes that would need to be made to make major systematic change would probably require constitutional amendments, some serious constitutional amendments. And there hasn't been a constitutional amendment passed since the 90s. And given the state of politics today, you need so much overwhelming support for an amendment that it's unlikely to ever happen. And the only other way to make a constitutional amendment without passing it through the Congress involves having a something called a convention of states, where all of the state governments get together and decide on something. And that is a thing that has been on the books but has never happened. So we don't even know what that would be like. Yeah. Do you think they'll find an excuse to stop Lula from running for president again? Maybe, but they keep trying and he keeps winning. So who knows? And he's extremely popular right now. Whew. That was a lot of... I just babbled for a long time on one question. Why are commies so ugly, dude? I mean, so fat. Thank you, Professor Jordan B. Peterson. Can't believe you're there. I have some questions about your grandmother and dreams you were having about her. Could you, would you like to hop on to debate about why you had a dream about the pubic hair of your grandmother? Or we could talk about how you now just flat out don't believe in scientific medicine anymore. Can we talk a little bit about that? WTF talk about? Show sources. Oh boy. There's a guy who calls himself Jordan B. Peterson in the chat who's trying to troll me. Somebody said, what's it called? You want to see? All right, let's find this. Let's see. Let's find this thing. I did see this. I watched this today about how he said that modern medicine does more harm than good, which was fucking baloney. And then also, the other thing is, I think from like his book Maps of Meaning or whatever. Let me let's find Jordan Peterson, modern medicine. Kind of rhymes. Then we get something. Just look for the last week. This week. Where is this? Okay, I think I saw it on Rebecca Watson's thing. Let's see. Yeah, let's go. Let's see the Rebecca Watson video I had seen. Okay, so this is about why white people are not... it's from a video called Why Are White People Scared of COVID Vaccine? But what I'm not watching is like the video itself. It's the quote from Jordan Peterson that she did in the video. So I'm like scrubbing, looking for it. Here we go. Now you might think this is a deep fake or something, but let's go. So here...
Nonsense.
I suspect if you did the statistics properly, I suspect that
that medicine, independent of public health, kills more people than it saves. I suspect if you factor in phenomena like the development of superbugs in hospitals, for example, that overall the net consequence of hospitals is negative. Now that's just a guess, and it could easily be wrong, but it also could not be wrong, and that is a good example, or that's where my thinking about what we don't know has taken.
So there's him saying that he believes that modern medicine has killed more people than it's saved. Which, like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know if you've heard of polio or smallpox, but I feel like there are a lot of people who are not dead today because of polio and smallpox being more or less eradicated. So I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Independent of public health. Oh. So if you don't factor in health in the grand scheme, if you just, like, I don't know, like the guy, I mean, that's the thing. Jordan Peterson has the habit of just saying absolute word salad that doesn't really mean much of anything, but yeah. I have a feeling though that even the superbugs, I feel like the superbugs, the deaths that are caused by superbugs are very small in comparison to the deaths caused by measles, mumps, rubella, smallpox, polio, all those things. The other one is gross. Let me see the thing about the Jordan Peterson's grandma thing. Quote from Jordan Peterson. Oh boy. Okay, no. It's from his book Maps of Meaning. And I don't want to read it because somebody said they were eating. So yeah. I mean, this is someone who just came in and just said, you're wrong because fat, which, if that's what you have to go to, then I guess I have already won. There you go. That was the victory bell of me winning. And there's me winning again. Every conversation with a Jordan Peterson fan. All right, let's watch this. I don't want to turn this into the reactor or anything, but every Jordan Peterson fan every conversation with a Jordan Peterson fan. So Jordan Peterson said this thing that I think is wrong. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. I watched the video. You watched a clip edited to make him look bad. No, I watched the full video. It was him talking for like 20 minutes. But did you watch his other video? No. Did you listen to this entirety of his podcast? No, but that's not... Did you read 12 Rules for Life? No, but I don't have Maps of Meaning. Damn it, I don't have... If you don't have to listen... If you didn't listen and read to all of this, you're taking them out of context. But, yeah. It's the Vosh defense. It only looks like Jordan Peterson saying horrible and bigoted things because there's all of this secret content that you don't see where he points out that he's not a reactionary bigot. All right, I'm gonna read the quote. I'm gonna read the content warning. I'm about to talk about Jordan Peterson, a sick old man who sexualizes his grandmother. All right. So this is going to have some graphic language. It's going to get some. There's going to be some discussion about genital area stuff. So, but this is a quote from right, like what's it called? Far right icon Jordan Bartholomew Peterson. From his book, Maps of Meaning. I dreamed I saw my maternal grandmother sitting by the bank of a swimming pool that was also a river. In real life, she had been a victim of Alzheimer's disease and had regressed before her death into a semi-conscious state. In the dream, as well, she had lost her capacity for self-control. Her genital region was exposed dimly. It had the appearance of a thick mat of hair. She was stroking herself absent-mindedly. She walked over to me with a big handful of pubic hair, compacted into something resembling a large artist's paintbrush. She pushed this at my face. I raised my arm several times to deflect her hand. Finally, unwilling to hurt her or interfere with her any farther, I let her have her way. She stroked my brush with her face with her brush gently and said like a child, "Isn't it soft?" I looked at her ruined face and said, "Yes, Grandma, it's soft." This is Jordan Peterson, far-right icon, friend of the far right. The man who eats nothing but red meat, but is a person who, every time I think that he's going to go out, this is a thing that he read, that he thought of, that he wrote into his computer machine, and then said, I'm going to publish this. I'm going to publish this in a book that everyone will be able to read. So, yeah. But I took him out of context because I read his words out of his book, which is probably about dreams or something. But, please, Grandma, brush on. Oh God, I think that the Jordan Peterson guy's gone by now, so it doesn't really matter. He hasn't talked in a while. So we should probably look at some other questions, eh? Let's see. Where's my tab of questions? Here we go. Oh, it was... My princess was in a different window. Here we go. Okay. So this is from Jiffy Chips. In my English class, we were having a discussion about the most impactful event that happened since 2005. What would you think that is? Most people have said COVID or the insurrection, but some brought up the point that those probably won't be more than a footnote in U.S. history because the way things like Whiskey Rebellion, Bleeding Kansas, and Spanish flu are thought. Do you agree? So there's a difference. The most impactful, not most important. I actually agree with you. I've had this conversation with my wife several times about how I don't think, 10 years from now, we're not going to think about COVID all that much. I think that if there was anything to say, the thing that is probably going to be, what's it called? It's probably going to be the 2008 financial crash. I feel like that is a thing that is going to... It feels like it was a very defining moment in the history of neoliberal capitalist economics, and that's going to... It's going to be a big deal. So that's my call. The 2008 financial crash. Just because we're still sort of living in the echoes of that. Someone said Jordan Peterson's a psychologist. I mean, he's a Jungian psychologist, and Carl Jung was a psychologist back at the beginning of the field. So he's a he's from a psychological pedigree of people who don't do anything that modern psychologists do, because modern psychology does scientific experiments and stuff and try to find, reasons for the things they believe instead of just making shit up. So Peterson is a psychologist in the same way that a plague doctor who cures people with leeches is a medical professional. Jung was borderline woo. Yeah, he was. I mean, it was all woo. Before psychology got into experimental stuff, it was just all woo. Now Freud's not used in psychology. Jung's not used in psychology. These are all things that are now more used in literature. It's like, call yourself an Aristotelian physicist. Yeah, for real. Well, do not dismiss leeches. I think they actually do help in some cases. Yes, we very recently discovered that leeches can be... Because leeches have this thing in this enzyme in their saliva that makes your blood not clot, and also it sucks on like it applies like kind of like a gentle bleeding pressure on you. So where leeches have been useful is when you get like certain types of surgery where you have to reattach blood vessels, specifically like if you're thinking about things like if you're sewing on a limb, like if somebody's lost a finger or something like that and they have to reattach it, because there's all of like the little capillaries and stuff like that, you have to encourage blood flow back into all of those, that a leech can actually kind of apply the pressure to get blood, to encourage blood to flow back into the limb. It's a thing. What's woo? Just sort of like non-scientific, like magic shit, spiritual stuff, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Same with maggots, too. I know we're going into some real gross stuff, but maggots have been shown to actually be... I've heard about their being useful more often than leeches, because maggots only eat necrotized tissue. They don't eat living tissue. So, which is like, very surgical and things like that. And so, oftentimes they're used to help with like people who have like badly infected wounds that they have to clean out all of the dead tissue. Like this often happens with people who have very bad, like people have really, really bad, what's it called? Like really bad diabetes. You can start to lose blood flow, and like oftentimes in like the heel of your foot and stuff like that, you get these really nasty infections and like a lot of dead tissue. And sometimes maggots have been introduced to sort of save entire limbs, where they'll eat away all the stuff that's rotten and infected and keep the healthy stuff. And then you just bandage that up, and it apparently is it's pretty good. They are actually very useful in that specific case. How is Phoebe? Well, she's right there. It looks like she's coming out of her house. But she seems okay. The territory issue between the cats has been a thing, but she has her little house on top of the dresser there. And she has a cat tower that's just a little bit off the screen here. And she hangs out on my desk a lot, but she doesn't venture. She basically comes down to eat and then hangs out in my office the rest of the day, which I don't like. It's not my favorite thing, but I don't know when this like territory issue between Romeo and Phoebe is ever going to get worked out. Are the cats still disputing the Rhine? Yeah, they still... It's gotten like a little bit better, but Phoebe's like... The issue is that Romeo is territorial in like a weird way, and Phoebe is grumpy. She hisses at him whenever he comes close. And so anytime they're together, it can cause conflict. Now Phoebe has found some places that she can get to where she's safe, like that house. But it's still, not great. Whose portrait is that on the wall? This is Emma Goldman. It's her, it's a mugshot from when she was arrested in 1901 for suspicion of being involved with the assassination of President McKinley. So what's the next question? I haven't been in the last stream the last couple times, so I'm sorry if you've answered the older submitted question of this, but I'm considering doing a video on the great up... Oh, I already answered this. And the answer is I haven't, but also I'm not really interested in taking requests unless you have, like, a story that you want to pitch. What's the worst socialist school of thought in your opinion? Probably National Bolshevism or whatever the fuck that is. Or Stalinism. Stalinism fucking sucks. I like the lo-fi in the background. Awesome, thank you. Do I think Biden will get a second term? I don't. If Biden gets to a second term, which I somehow don't think he'll run for a second term, but if he does, I think he'll lose. I think that given the trajectory that the people are on right now, I would say that we are on track for the Republicans to control the House and the Senate next election in 2022. The amount of broken promises and shitty half measures and just everything that the left warned everybody about with Joe Biden is going to cost him the election in 2022. It's totally going to happen. And the Republicans will rebrand as like, we're not like Trump anymore, right? So Trump's gone. We're just us. Will Harris get a first term? Something makes me think that Harris might end up losing the election in 2024 to Donald Trump. That's like my little nightmare, is that at some point Harris is going to lose in 2024 to Donald Trump, and that'll be weird. But I'm hoping, like the next big like presidential thing that I think is interesting to think about is the possibility that in 2024 the left does a larger than normal attempt to primary Harris in the Democratic primaries, which doesn't usually, like, I feel like if Biden doesn't run for a second term and Harris is put forward as the candidate, that I think a left-wing competitor against Harris could do reasonably well, because I feel like they'll treat it like it's an incumbent candidate, but it's not. And so we'll go from there. Does religion have a place in socialist thought? It can, for different people. There are parts of the world and there are people and communities and cultures where religion plays a large part of their community life. And religion's a source of hope and joy and solidarity for a lot of people that I wouldn't want to take away from anybody. For example, the Catholic Church has a pretty large role in like the left movement in South America and Central America, especially in like countries like Nicaragua. So I wouldn't want to take that away. Who do you think could run as a lefty presidential nom? AOC could. There's some like kind of like left-leaning liberals. Maybe not. Like the left-leaning liberals I would think would be like Warren and Gillibrand, but they're very unlikely to try and upset the party line. Maybe I'm trying to think of another. Who else could run for president? Could Rashida Tlaib could run for president, I think. I don't know if she's looking into it. I don't know. I don't know if the sort of successor to Bernie has really come out of the ashes yet. The American left is going to have to the American left really has to deal with this year. It's about dealing with the fact that the American left really lacks a historical analysis and a material analysis of its own past, and at the moment is having issues because in our kind of age of racial reckoning and our more awareness of racism, the American left does not have much of a historical understanding to show that there's been traditionally in American history, there has been a lot of anti-black specific, but general racism in the labor movement that needs to be that's not just a thing you can say, well, we're not doing that anymore. You have to actually work at it. You have communities that have been ostracized from left-wing activism because of racism in the labor movement that needs to be those bridges need to be rebuilt, and that is really heavy, hard work that the left needs to be working on. The left needs to be very involved in trying to ensuring and making the case to Black Americans that socialism is the way forward, and that's going to be a long discussion, and that's going to be that's going to need a lot of allyship and solidarity that a lot of the American left doesn't seem to be all that interested in thinking about, or at least is some people are trying to dismiss it as PMC identity politics and react against it. And right now there's sort of a reckoning of the left in America has to sort of tear itself apart between the socialists, or what do you call them, the Tucker Carlson left, the Glenn Greenwalds, the Tulsi Gabbards, the Red Scare hosts, those kinds of people are going to have to go to odds with people who came out of the Bernie moment. Do I have thoughts on the Canadian left? Yeah, it has a very similar issue. It also doesn't have a strong historical connection to the indigenous people of this land, and so honestly, the left-wing activism in Canada should be more anti-colonial and focused more on land back stuff, and we are not doing that right now. A Canadian left that doesn't center and have strong leadership from the indigenous cultures that our land was taken from, that the indigenous nations of this land, is a bad one. You said we need to communicate to BIPOC that socialism is the way forward. I think that I guess that was poorly worded, but there is a strong there's a strong idea in a lot of especially African American culture that comes from historical relations between union movements, that socialism and these sort of old left ideals are racist. They're associated with white people. They're associated with racist white people who intentionally worked and made compromises to exclude them from the benefits of collectivizing resources. And there is a long history in American history of those fighting for racial justice in America being associated with the left, and that connection needs to be reforged. Hopefully that makes sense and isn't. And the people who are going to do that are black socialists, and there are plenty of them, and they are great. But it is two sort of activist communities that that don't have the greatest relationship right now, and needs to be worked on if we're going to, overcome the horrors of neoliberalism. Any thoughts on Noam Chomsky? Noam Chomsky's the guy who made me an anarchist. He's got some issues, but overall, He's smarter than a lot of people on the internet, I will tell you that. So you are a Cindy, cool. I am a anarcho-communist. I haven't really made my... Syndicalism seems interesting. I have to really think about it a lot more to see if I'm 100% on board with it, but... What issues? Like, the American, socialist left is, unfortunately, does not reflect the diversity of the United States at this point. And especially when it comes to America's black community. Because there is a long association of the labor movement and labor politics with white supremacist politics. And this is a thing in American history that a lot of the American left either doesn't think about, doesn't acknowledge, or tries to ignore. And but you can't ignore history. History exists whether you pay attention to it or not. And it has led to some extreme rifts between the mainstream socialist community, groups like CPUSA and the Democratic Socialists of America, and those advocating to further racial justice, especially in places like the American South. And so the more that left-wing people publicly deride things like identity politics, the more that this is going to be a harder fight to do, a harder conversation to have. I'm hoping that makes sense. I'm hoping that I am making myself clear. And I would argue that the key to understanding this is having is that America's left lacks a historic understanding of their own movement, because there has been a strong concerted left effort to destroy the left in American history in the mid-century. Through McCarthyism and anti-communist crusades. And so the left of today doesn't have a lot of its connection to America's radical left roots. And so it lacks the real appreciation for the sort of history of what's going on. And you really can't talk about the left in American history without confronting and trying to, make amends and trying to work through the division that's been created by a lot of anti-black racism in America's labor movement. And now we have Phoebe. You guys can't see her, but she's here. She's right there. What are you gonna do, Phoebes? You want to come over here? Come on. Come over here. Come on. Here, you want me to get closer? Is that what you want? Here. Get you. Ugh. So this is Phoebe. Do you think botching the pandemic response is going to change the lib perception that Sweden is like a utopia? I don't know. I have this feeling that when the pandemic is firmly in the rearview mirror, that we're going to surprisingly forget about it and how bad people did. It's going to be actually, I think it'll almost be shocking how fast people will be desperate to forget about COVID and to not think about it and to not learn any lessons from it. I don't know what she's doing. She's just wandering around my desk smelling things. Smelling my coffee cup specifically. Because I have ADHD, so I have a bunch of coffee cups here. And by a bunch, I mean 2. Just right here. Sure as hell we did after 1919. Yeah. Historians didn't really know too much about the Spanish flu pandemic and didn't talk about it a whole lot until the swine flu epidemic of like 2009. And then people were like, oh shit, we should probably like look into this. And that's when they started doing like real research into the Spanish flu. How do you feel about schools making people who aren't interested in music doing music stuff? I mean, I don't mind it. It's fun. It's culture. Music's one of those things, like learning how to play an instrument is one of those things that is really, really unfun. That only really gets rewarding once you've like, you know, really pushed through the unfun parts. Maybe it could be voluntary and just have like everybody who wants to be part of the band to be part of it, but as far as like terrible things we do to children in the name of education, I think it's pretty low on the list. Next one we got here is I recently watched a documentary about the Mexican-American border, which had footage of the insides of ICE prisons. It looked like a KZ. I went to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and how KZ looks the same. And it made me sick to my stomach. What can we do against it when our governments do not care what allies are doing and there is no justice? It makes me feel so powerless. In the EU, we have similar ones for refugees. I do not want to let atrocities happen again. Yeah, I don't know if I have like a really easy answer right now, unfortunately, is the thing. Life's the fact that, you know, Western imperialist states are getting more and more comfortable. They're getting more and more comfortable with this, like, whatchamacallit? This sort of like Fortress America politics that, you know, that people need to be imprisoned at the borders. Because when climate change, they're preparing for when climate change makes a whole bunch of refugees. Europe too. Europe's refugee crisis is going to be getting worse over time as large parts of the world start becoming uninhabitable due to climate change. And so they're normalizing this kind of behavior for when mass refugee camps become normal, like later in the century. So, yeah. I mean, right now, making any sort of political change is feeling kind of hopeless. The only thing I can think of is you really need to, like, you need to be agitating and, what's it called? You need to be, like, protesting and, realizing that just switching... I'm hoping that our current situation will show to a lot of people that the president turning from a Republican to a Democrat doesn't change a whole lot. Just like how, for me, like the Zoomers needed something like what we got. Millennials had Barack Obama get elected. Oh my god. Millennials had Barack Obama get elected and then had a lot of the exact same shit that had happened under George Bush happen again. And that, I think that's a lot of reason why a lot of millennials are so jaded. But who knows? I do hope that more people are paying attention this time. Watching people make excuses for the exact same things that Trump was doing just, this time last year. Okay, I gotta move the camera because Phoebe's being very cute right now. She's playing on her cat tower, and she's like playing with the dangly fuzzy things. So I'll just keep that there for a little bit. So I'm sure that is much more amusing than looking at my face. Okay. And she's looking out the window. Okay. What's a way to explain that Bill 21 was bad? I was talking with somebody about acting people who thought they were bigoted because they want secularism because the Catholic Church is bad. She didn't mention Muslims. It was just about not liking religion. What would be a good way to explain it? There's a difference between letting the church control government and letting people wear turbans and headscarves. I mean, you would probably say there is a difference, and also that to religions that aren't Catholicism, there are articles of religious clothing that are essential, and that if the choice is between a job and adhering to the tenets of their faith, they will choose their faith, and therefore you are telling them that they can't work in a certain sector, and you are essentially limiting their civil rights and civil liberties, their constitutional rights, their freedoms. And if you believe that people have the right to have a religion, and then these kinds of like religious symbols bans is basically telling people who, especially Sikhs and Muslims, you are not welcome in this job. Because there's no strong emphasis that Catholics wear crucifixes everywhere they go, but there can be some very strong, to the point where they would choose a hijab or a niqab or a turban over work, because it's part of their religion. It's part of their identity. No chewing on my cable. Just hang out here while I pet Phoebe. Is that okay? What do you think Trump-type alt-right people would do if you reformed U.S. democracy so they couldn't win election anymore? Earlier today I was watching a lefty streamer and basically said, yeah, election reform is good, but what if they actually do a successful coup because they can't win elections anymore? I think that the amount of people who are willing to do a coup is much smaller than the amount of people who would vote for a fascist if they were on the if they were on the ballot, if that makes sense. Which means that if you were to take, say, hey, you can't be a fascist or have a history of trying to violently overthrow the state and run for president, then those people would just vote for whoever the conservative is and not think about it much. But and the amount of actual die-in-the-wood fascists who are ready to die for their cause is actually quite small. It's more than I'd like it to be, but it's when it comes to putting your life on the line. I think Phoebe's bored. All right. What you doing, Phoebes? She's a little bit hyper. Do you think that Disney and Warner Brothers still have the racist propaganda cartoons in Content ID? Probably. All right. What did you mean when you said the Democratic Party ideas about New Keynesianism were hitting a wall in the 1970s? Keynesianism was starting to hit a wall in the 1970s because, or at least in its public perception, because there was a bunch of economic downturns happening that were related to like the oil embargo and things like that were causing economic disruptions and causing something called stagflation, which was this stagnant economy because there was also like, the opening up the economy, the beginning of outsourcing, those kinds of things. And no matter how much money the government poured into things, it was just causing inflation. And so conservatives sort of coined the term stagflation and used it as a cudgel to sort of attack the Keynesian ways that especially the Democratic Party was using to attack, through like the kind of old FDR system to change to deal with economic problems and to manage the economy. And unfortunately, they said, well, this isn't working, so try neoliberalism. And that sort of is what the big change was in the 1970s. How much do you think Keynes would have suggested dealing with the 1970s? I actually don't know too much about Keynes, the person. My guess is that he would have tried to things that were kind of popular, there was right at the end of Keynesian times, there were people playing with some really wacky ideas. Like Richard Nixon was playing with the idea of introducing a negative income tax, which would have had it so that if you made below a certain income level, the government would just give you that money, kind of like a UBI, a means-tested kind of UBI. And that, because the thing about Keynes is that in a stagnant economy, he would think that we would need to find ways to get more money into the hands of people. And if there weren't jobs, to stimulate work in the economy, then you needed to just stimulate the economy by giving people money. And so I think that really the option would be to move towards a sort of negative income tax type solution, which would result in more people buying stuff. And then also probably if there was stuff to prime the pump for in the 1970s, it would be trying to change the energy infrastructure to be less dependent on gasoline, because the price of gasoline was causing all the economic problems. So you could have solved two birds with one stone there by investing in different energy sources besides petroleum and public transit and those kinds of things, and that would have probably improved stuff later. Would that have worked? I mean, I can't say for sure, but might have. Would have at least helped with the stagnation, I think. Yeah. Whether or not neoliberalism would still take hold, I don't know. It's really anyone's guess. We don't have a time machine, so we can't really know. Okay. List of alternative presidents starting with Ted Kennedy. I already answered this one a while ago. Camp of the Saints of the Turner Diaries. Which would you read first if you were locked in a cell with no other books or forms of entertainment? Probably the Turner Diaries. Much closer to the kind of history that I study, so I'd probably read that one. Let's see. Supposed disease killed all grass, including the kinds we cultivated in the old world in 8100. Would that knock humanity, aside from Mesoamerica, back to the hunter-gatherer state? I don't think... I mean, it would be pretty devastating to any society that was very dependent on wheat. But, aren't there, there's there's societies that are based on cassava and And also, indigenous societies are very dependent on corn, which is a grass, technically. It's kind of a genetically engineered version of teosinte, but it would have a major effect on the ecosystem. This is true. Yeah. Like, what's it called? Something so huge, the knock-on effects of it would be absolutely impossible to predict. That amount of, like, just sheer biomass dying would probably cause some, like, serious problems. That just, first of all the carbon would come out of them, which would cause massive climate change, and then there would be like grass is very good for preventing soil erosion. So there'd be massive like geological changes with soil erosion, and then like the niche of grass would probably be replaced with some other animal. Things like grazing animals would not have food, which would mean a whole bunch of animals dying, which would mean like a breakdown of entire like ecosystems, and whether or not there would even be humans after a few centuries is really in question at that point. And even in the long, no, there is clover. Yeah, even in the long term, grasses there'd be problems because there's this like thing that's sort of showing, and kind of climate change breaks this. But if you're to look at Earth on like the global scale, like the hundreds of millions of years timeline, one of the things that's happening is that the overall oxygen saturation of the atmosphere has been very, very slowly going down. And it's sort of the reason why, like, back in, like, dinosaur times, you could have, like, insects that were, like, huge, because there was just so much oxygen that they could do that. And that as we've come closer to the present, oxygen's getting, oxygen in the atmosphere is going down a little bit. Something. Anyways, for some reason, there's the evolution of grass is sort of an example of like the long-term change of the gases of the atmosphere, where grass is a bit more, it uses less gas resources than like say trees and stuff like that, and so they're becoming slowly more prevalent, and we don't really know what that's going to, like, if there's no grass, which is like one of the more successful plants at getting its resources with very little, like without requiring a whole lot, that's going to be, could be some interesting evolution happening at that point. So that's the thing. Gosh, gotta drink more water. Been talking too much. My throat's starting to get sore. Would a left-wing U.S. government have any obligation to honor long-standing deals to give military support to countries like the Kurds or whatever? Robert Evans the other day said it would be wrong to just abruptly pull support to groups who operate in an assumption that the U.S. will help them. I think there's a case-by-case issue there to talk more about. Oh boy. So this is another question that is basically another reframed, hey, if I described religion to you this way, would then you be bigoted against people with religious beliefs? Suppose religion was a new thing and been created only by a few thousand people in the world went into. Would you be more willing to be anti-religion in that world? I still would not choose to be bigoted against people's sincerely held beliefs. even if it was new. But also, a lot of the things that makes religion what it is would not have developed. I don't know. It would have developed differently. But in this hypothetical scenario where you want me to be bigoted against people because of their faith, I still would not be bigoted towards people because of their faith. I'm sorry. What's giving me hope these days? What do you do to cheer up? That's a good question. I just know that there are leftists who are very old, older than I am, and they still hold out. And in many ways, if you look on like the real long scale, we are in a better place for, progressive views than we were like 20 years ago. And I'm old enough to remember that. And that gives me a little bit of hope that at least things are moving in a positive direction and that we are making an impact. Whether it's going to be enough and fast enough, I don't know, but at least something is working a little bit. We have sort of, for all the bad things that happen, in some ways we have pierced the veil a little bit. Tristan, pretend every religious person on the planet showed up at your 8th birthday party and called you a nerd and sprayed you with cranberry juice. Then would you be anti-religious? Yeah, I know Robert was basing this thing on his experiences in Rojava. Yeah, I know. All right. Being bigoted against religious people for this question asker is like green eggs and ham. They're always like, would you, could you, if it were new? Would you, could you, if it was blue? I will not hate religious people. There's no hate for religious people in me. I will not hate them, 255 AD. There we go. Made it rhyme. All right. Why do people think... Who recorded that? Why do people think democracy and free market economics aren't in conflict? That's because of propaganda, yo. We live very deep in neoliberal propaganda. It's been around for 40 years. We're like on our third generation that's grown up with it. Maybe 3.5. And the idea that the idea that all that free markets is synonymous with democracy is so deeply entwined with our culture through our propaganda and so superstructural reinforcement that it's just real intense. Would it be accurate to call sci-fi niche shows like The Expanse Canadians in space? Just look at Stargate. It's true. A lot of sci-fi shows get filmed in Toronto and Vancouver, and I don't know why. If I remember correctly, The Expanse is filmed in Toronto. I think I've seen places where it's being filmed. And I think I've actually seen, when I lived in Toronto, I think I've seen, The Expanse and stuff like that. But people have been very propagandized to believe that, I feel like there's, this strong, message we've been taught to just be yeah, this sucks, but that's sort of just the way things are, and it's sort of a law of nature. In many ways, people are taught that, capitalism is just the natural system that there wasn't an ideological project, it wasn't pushed for, it was just naturally what came out of choosing the best things possible. And it's wrong. It's very wrong. But that's an uphill fight. It's cheap to film in Canada, and there are benefits to it. Yeah, it happens so often, though, that, like, when you live in Toronto, like, you be, like, watching TV, and you're like, oh, I actually recognize that intersection where they filmed this show. Yeah, but to a lot of people, democracy just means one thing, and that is you get to vote once every 4 years for the person that you like to be in charge. That's literally the only thing. They don't realize that, you know, democracy can expand to other things like the workplace, and that our society could be a lot more just, and that and that voting once every 4 years is actually not very democratic at all. So some think tank came out with an economic analysis that shows that having the government just offer everyone a job that pays $15 an hour will at worst be net neutral for the economy. And the host of the Lib Law podcast have kind of latched onto that as a policy to support. Should I bother trying to get them to realize how left-wing that idea actually is? They seem to view it as a cool technocratic way to get to $15 an hour without changing the law. I mean, short-term gains, I don't think it really matters. If that wins and it does well, then you'd be like, hey, that was actually a socialist idea. Want to do more socialist? Does Toronto have good tweed? There are, like, what's it called? I think Toronto is, like, made of weed stores. Weed is, like, the thing is, Shaggy, weed is legal in Canada. Weed is 100% a legal substance. I have bought marijuana I have bought cannabis from the government. What's it called? I have, what's it called? It has, they have, like, little warning labels. Like, they see, look, that's a government, like, kind of like a cigarette label for THC. So, it is a legal for recreational use substance and has been since 2018. There are marijuana stores all over Toronto. Toronto is definitely a place where you can buy good marijuana because there's just stores everywhere. But, like, I live in a small city that has maybe about 300,000 people in it, and there's, like, at least, like, 3 or 4 weed stores in my city. So, yeah. Will I do any other collaborations with Alternate History Hub? Maybe. I have to, what's it called? I haven't talked to him in, like, almost a year now. Order your weed online, it's way cheaper. That's true. Yeah, you can go to OCS, which is the Ontario Cannabis Store, which is a government-run store that sells you cannabis. I remember because when cannabis became legal, I was a social media director for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. And so one of the things that I did is I was working on a series of short videos to teach people what was and was not going to be legal once cannabis became legalized on October 18th, 2018. And I was up late. I think I was up till like 4 a.m. finishing those videos. And then I was up at midnight right when the Ontario Cannabis Store opened for the first time on the website, and I might have been one of the first people in the province to buy legal cannabis. So, yeah, I'm a baller. Should the fight for the left it would prevent the corporate culture of cannabis sales? Yeah, the corporate capture of cannabis sales is an issue. Though I will also say that the tax revenue of legal cannabis very useful for paying for things like healthcare and shit. So there's a balance, you know. In a fictional story I'm writing, you can also buy mushrooms on a lot of those weed sites. I would not be surprised that happens. We're already opening those conversations in some places. I can't remember what country it is. There's a I think it's, or maybe it's a state. I think it's Washington State in the United States, Colorado. One of those has already talked about legalizing psilocybin mushrooms for recreational use. So that's already been that's already happened somewhere. And it happened in the 2020 election. There was a referendum, and so I do think that that is the next level. And also, like, people are already talking. Like, there's already some very real conversations happening about opening the doors of scientific research into things like psilocybin and psilocybin and LSD as being therapeutic. So mushrooms might become legal for recreational use in the not too distant future. I imagine that LSD, because of how intense it is and how it needs to have a lot of ritual and stuff attached to it and needs like a proper therapeutic use, that you might start seeing LSD legalized for psychotherapy. I would not be surprised if that happened. I have this like thing where I'm I'm nervous about the idea of taking something like psilocybin. I'm not against the idea per se. It'd be interesting to try it, but I would be like very, very, very concerned about making sure I'm in the right context and I have the right people and I have experienced people with me and that kind of stuff, because I definitely think that it has therapeutic use for people with ADHD. It has therapeutic use for people with anxiety. And I think that I could, I think that there would be a good thing to possibly be a very enlightening experience. Like, I'm interested in like the sort of ego death stuff and the whole like how it can have like a serious positive impact on someone's psychological health. And like after this year being stuck inside, I would actually be very interested in possibly thinking of it as a therapeutic. So I'd be interested to see what effect it would have on me. I've been told, one of my friends is a neuroscientist, and she's sort of explained it as like, if you think of your brain as like a bunch of connections, right? And there are various different strengths, and that we build up all of these, complex structures of thought that we repeat over and over again. And that things like psychedelic trips sort of make that go away for a bit and resets it in a way. And that might be I'd be very interested to see like what would happen if I like kind of had a brain reset, like a consciousness reset in a way, where I had to sort of rebuild it. And I'd be very curious about that. I think that would be really, that feels like it could be possibly a very positive experience for me. But in Minecraft. I do think though that some of those drugs like LSD is one of those drugs that needs ritual, and it needs to be a guided experience with a trained expert, because psychedelics can, for all the good they can do, they can also do a lot of harm if you aren't doing them in the right kind of headspace and with the right kind of mentality towards it. All right. Abraham Lincoln never went to university or law school. He just read up on the law privately and turned up one day to take the bar exam. How would you feel about going back to that, not requiring lawyers to go to law school? I mean, if you can qualify for it, I'd be okay with it. I mean, there's in some ways like a lot of the professional schools have built themselves up into just being financial barriers to make sure that the right people get into the professions. But I think that it would also, the law is a lot more complicated now, as Delru says. Yes, I do think that some way of like lowering the bar to get, no pun intended, to get into the professions would be pretty good, because right now I think there's a lot of like monetary gatekeeping. But should you be able to just like walk into the bar and if you pass it, you become a lawyer? That might be a little underqualified, but it's a start. Why am I so sweaty? I'm not. I might be like, this might be like, this is sort of dramatic lighting because there's like a big bright light like right here, but I'm not sweaty. I'm like bone dry. I'm actually kind of cold. But it's just, yeah, it's just dramatic lighting. So see? How hot is it in that room? I have the window open and I have a fan on, so not very hot. It's like, actually, as I said, it's kind of cold. It's probably like, I don't know, like 18 degrees in here, maybe 17 degrees. So kind of, it's not cold, but it's not exactly warm either. This is some sort of like really weird troll. Because like I won't lie, like I do have a Nixonian disposition, and when I'm hot I sweat quite a bit, but it's not right now. Oh boy. Alrighty. I think though that we might have that be the last question, because it's 8:58. It's almost 9 o'clock, and I got stuff to do. I had a busy day today. I had to go to the optometrist, and so a lot of my like daily chores I didn't get to, so I gotta like deal with the litter boxes, and I gotta prep for D&D and listen to a chapter of my audiobook that I've taken from the library and that kind of stuff. Arrgh! Nixon's back! I loved it. Oh man. What the hell was that? What was his vice president? Agnew, Spiro Agnew. Come, Agnew! Pick me up! Oh, man. Fucking rolling in it. Okay. Let's find someone to raid. Alright, let's raid Sarah Zedig. That's always fun. And she's building a cat tree. Oh, boy. Yeah, we gotta do that. But everybody, I'll be back on Friday for the last reactor. Take care of yourselves and each other. Be good, kind, and I'll see you guys later.